SITC fam. If you like what you're hearing, don't forget to rate us 5 stars on any podcast platform. Leave us a review wherever you can. And don't forget to subscribe to LL Geselle on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram and find us on Facebook at Sonographers in the Cities.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Sonographers in the Cities. I'm Lynn.
And I'm Geselle.
This episode is the continuation of our last episode of revamping Sonographers in the Cities, topics that we previously discussed when we first started podcasting. Now we're just going to I wouldn't say redo the episode, but just updating the topics with this episode.
Yes. And today we are talking about where do sonographers work? And a lot of people think that sonographers, like we said in the previous episode, only scan babies, but we actually do a lot more things. So if you haven't heard last episode, go ahead and listen to that. But we do work in many places besides hospital settings and clinic settings. So today we're going to talk about where do sonographers work and all the different places you are able to work if you go into this field.
Exactly. So Geselle, would you like to start where can we most commonly find sonographers or technologists?
Yeah, so more commonly, we are located in clinic settings to see babies, right? So they will call that OBGYN. And more commonly as well in hospital settings for, people coming into the hospital or patients who are doing like procedures or surgeries that are ultrasound related, or doctor's offices that do cardiac sonography, which is heart ultrasounds or echo ultrasounds. So I'd say those three are the top. So clinics, hospitals, and doctor's offices. And there are two ways you can be a patient as far as getting an ultrasound scan. One is an outpatient. So you do it as somebody who gets an order from your primary care doctor and they're like, hey, I want you to get an ultrasound. So you're considered an outpatient where it's not a stat or emergency and you go in somewhere and you get an ultrasound done. So that's considered outpatient. And then the other side of it is inpatient, where if you're admitted into a hospital setting and you are going to be staying there overnight and you have to get an ultrasound done in the hospital, that is an inpatient setting. So sonographers can work in hospitals that are either outpatient or inpatient. And obviously the emergency room, you're not considered an inpatient yet unless you're admitted. So you're still working in a hospital setting to work on patients who are coming in through the emergency room. So I'd say those are the most popular ones.
Wow, that's so well explained. If I didn't know anything, I would totally understand what you said.
Yay, thank you.
You're welcome. Honestly, though, because when I first started, when I was helping my dad and stuff, I didn't know what inpatient, outpatient means. The only thing that stuck to me was like inpatient is when you're admitted and you have to stay overnight.
Yeah.
So, but that's a very good explanation. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Yeah. And there are other places that we can work at.
Yeah. Spoken like a true senior sonographer, guys. Here I am, like a new grad, and I'm just like,
You're like, oh,
ditto.
You're like, oh yeah, that. But so you explain to us what you do on your daily basis, which is normally outpatients, right?
Yes.
So you're getting paid, you work at a hospital, but you do outpatients, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So my hospital has a lab. This is part of the cardiovascular department. They have their own lab. It's for treating, patients of the doctors that run the lab, as well as research that these doctors do. So we do both. and there are two sides, outpatient, inpatient. It's just that as a lab, our protocols are more thorough than the ultrasound department of the hospital, because obviously in the hospital, what they scan, they need to know what they're looking for, so their protocols are a little bit less, and it's more urgent because they get a lot of stats and all that stuff. But us, we do our protocols more thoroughly. It takes more time because we need to look at all the details. So that for me, for my department, that's the case. I know that every hospital is different. I know Geselle also works in the hospital, but her, day to day is definitely different than mine because I don't have like 99 orders. So
Thousands.
Geselle, can you go over what you do in your hospital?
Yeah, so in my hospital, we're a general department that includes vascular. So since you have a big hospital that has two different departments for ultrasound, our different departments for our hospital, one is general and then one is echo. So general does all general, so everything in the body except for the heart. Echo does just solely the heart. So we've got two of those departments, right? And for me, we're doing outpatients that come in that have scheduled appointments. So that's what an outpatient is. And then we have inpatients who are the patients that are staying in the hospital, who are admitted, and they're called routine exams, meaning you need to get them done at some point of your day because this patient is in the hospital.
Mm.
And then we have the emergency room, which are patients that come in and they need an ultrasound stat. We call it stat because you need it ASAP right now. It's like needed more than ASAP, right? It's a stat. So these are patients that are considered emergent and you need to get to those. They're usually top priority. So I'm also at a children's hospital. So now we have two emergency room settings. We have the pediatric emergency room and then the adult emergency room. They're two separate buildings. So we're a very busy hospital, as you guys can see on my Instagram. We haven't been this busy in a very long time, where we're reaching numbers of over 100 patients. But the thing is that we're a very big department. So every hospital, like Lynn said, is different with how many people you have working there, if you have multiple departments. But for me, I scan everything except for the heart. So procedures we'll do in the hospital, inpatient and outpatient. So you can only imagine how busy it can get. There are some other hospitals in the valley in Las Vegas who aren't as busy and they only have like, let's say, two machines, two techs working. But in our hospital, we have about 10 machines and usually 5 to 7 people working. So it just kind of depends on where you work, how busy your hospital is. Some hospitals also have the call shifts where you have to work at night from like usually around 10:30, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And they'll call you like, hey, we have the stat ultrasound. We need you to come in. And it's like 2 or 3 a.m. But at my hospital, we have graveyard shifts. Not every hospital has a graveyard shift. Majority of hospitals for sonographers will have this on-call process where they'll call you in for a stat, and they're usually just emergency ones. But yeah, we're so busy that we need graveyard. That's just kind of like a glimpse into how busy my hospital is because we have the biggest hospital in the valley. So yeah, if you work somewhere like that, there's going to be lots of people with you. But at other places, it's usually just like one or two or maybe a few people working at a time.
Nice.
Yeah.
This sounds super duper busy.
I don't know why it's super busy, but
I don't know how you
it's
do
really
it.
busy. Um,
You
and
have
essentially,
10 machines?
uh-huh, yeah, we've got 10
Wow.
machines. So we've got two rooms in the ER, the adult ER.
Okay.
So two machines over there. Then we've got one machine in the peds ER. So that's three rooms. Then we have two rooms in the main ultrasound. So that's five rooms that we have to ultrasound, right? Like five rooms you can
Wow.
physically put patients in to scan at one time. Now we have five other machines that can be portable and moved to scan other people all around the hospital. So you can have up to 10 people basically scanning at a time. Um,
That's awesome.
and yeah, it's pretty crazy just to think about that. Because when I worked at other places in the valley, which I've worked pretty much everywhere in Las Vegas, a lot of the places only have two machines. So to go to other places that only have two machines, like, yes, that's going to be extremely busy too, because there's only two machines in, let's say, like a 400, 500 bed hospital. So how do you
Mhm.
manage 20, 30, 40 patients with only two machines? And that's where, the burnout comes in. But yeah, that's for another topic, another day. But we do work a lot in the hospital. That's very, very common. And people don't realize when we're scanning them in the hospital, they're like, oh, I didn't know you could scan my leg or like my neck, you know?
Mhm.
They're like, I thought it was for babies. Or we get that running joke, which is like, is it a boy or girl? You're like scanning
Yeah.
their kidneys. What other places do sonographers work, would you say, that people don't know that they could work at?
They can travel.
Mhm.
Well, technically, that's like because traveling, you can work in hospitals,
Yep.
inpatient, outpatient, anywhere that has the contract for travel sonographers.
Mhm.
Um, I think you can also work as freelance. Like once you're an established sonographer, technologist, you can create your own personal business
Yes.
like
Good
ultrasound
point.
business.
Mhm.
We do freelance to contract to doctors' offices, private practices. You know, with freelance, I think the opportunities are endless as long
Mhm.
as you have those contracts going.
Yeah.
Let me see what else. Teach
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah.
because how
Teaching.
can you?
How do we learn?
Can we learn, and how
Teaching
can our
labs.
profession grows
Mhm.
without educators?
Yeah.
So
Teaching and educating.
definitely you're not just scanning, you're teaching as well. I'm trying to think of other ones besides clinics and private practices.
Yeah. Yeah. Private
Did I cover
practices,
everything?
companies.
I feel like it's
Um,
like I know of someone research like
mm,
what does he do now? He One of the my preceptor at one of my sites, he was poached by a company that creates I want to say it was like stents or
mm,
um and something that they put in your veins and arteries, right?
mhm.
And he was poached, right? The words for him to come to work at their company just to
Oh,
basically do research on the materials of as they want to
yeah.
improve the materials of their products.
Mhm.
So
That's
he
cool.
does that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's really cool because I've never thought of it
Never
as
heard
in
of
like
that.
a non
So what they would
clinical
call it,
setting.
yeah, non-clinical settings, which is like the educating, the researching.
Yeah.
There's also the seminar things where you can go and be in charge of those, work for ARDMS or any of the registry companies, the management positions that people can go into, besides businesses or becoming a director.
Yes.
Um, there was one other thing.
I have a question.
Mhm,
Just because, like we had this joke in with my cohort while we were in school because our anatomy is so perfect because
mhm.
we're young and stuff. I'm just like, do you know if how do you get paid to get those images into textbooks? Are there sonographers that do
Oh,
that? You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like they
Well,
gotta get the images from somewhere, so someone
right.
gotta scan.
Sure. I'm assuming that's where they get the images from. Because like
Yeah,
how else would they? And I think they need to update those, by the way. A,
agreed.
a lot of the textbooks. So whoever's doing these textbooks, images and things, which for example, there's this pediatric sonography book that has amazing images in it.
Mhm.
But we take pictures all the time in my pediatric hospital. So it's like I'm wondering, can they go into our archives and like get the images and put it in the book?
I don't think they can unless, they have to pay for it.
That makes sense. But that also made me think about like other jobs that you could do, which is like, become a writer, write a book. You can work in
Yes.
apps and do applications like GE or Canon or
Mhm.
the things that we use on the daily, which in my place of work, we do Viewpoint. So maybe
Mhm.
you can work in like applications, the technology side of it, making machines or helping them improve. There's just so much more,
It's endless.
yeah, to the field than people really think. Like we don't just scan babies. And yes, we have so many other things that there are possibilities to do. Because I remember there's another place that my friend got hired at, and all she did was like measure. She basically did like vein mappings all day at a vascular place. And all
Mhm.
she did was like help the doctor like find the veins and the vessels and measure them. And like I was like, I'd do
Oh.
that. Do that.
I I think I've heard of some of the places around here. They're like vein clinics, then all they do is just vein maps and DVTs. Like,
Yeah, which
yeah.
that's a lot, but I mean, I would do that. Then you don't have to do any T badges or like you don't have to do any like kidneys or just do veins. But there's just so much more to ultrasound and where you can work. And so do your research and what you want to do, but obviously we're going to have more episodes that talk about the journeys of how to get there and how to decide and things like that. But um, we want people to know because we spread ultrasound awareness that there are so many options, so much opportunity to do out there in this field. And it's a great field too, especially because if you're like somebody who only wants to do outpatient and you want to work in a radiology place that people can just walk on in, you take their pictures and then they walk on out. There's a lot of places like that if you can't handle the hospital setting. But if you want the like challenge and you want the craziness and the stress and you live for that stress, which there's stress everywhere, right? But I feel like
Yeah.
hospital settings have a higher stress level just because you're dealing with patients who are intubated or patients who are literally there's beeping noises and wires and IVs,
Mhm.
and some people can't handle that, which is totally fine if you can't handle that. You don't have to work in a hospital setting in this field. So I think that's really nice.
I think and that can go along with because we get a lot of questions. I see it constantly on Instagram and on your Facebook page, and I get asked as well, like how much bodily fluids or how
Mm,
gross is sonography. And
mhm.
it just depends on where you want to work. Because
Yeah.
usually outpatients, you don't see any.
Mhm.
Inpatient, you see a lot more.
Yeah.
So knowing, what you can handle and what you won't handle, that will influence where you want to work.
Right. Exactly. And it's always, I think the one question that I used to get all the time was like, will I deal with blood?
Right.
And like, well, if you do echo, I don't really think you do deal with blood and echo as much. Do they? I
No.
mean, maybe do they put like when you do the IV studies on the echoes, like maybe, but I don't know.
I
You don't
mean, the
see blood
IVs
really.
would just go, just
Yeah,
a
just it's
normal
just
IV.
there, like we
Yeah.
don't really see blood with that. But the only
Unless you do TEE,
oh, mm-hmm,
that's a risk of bleeding. But again,
also very low risk,
yes,
right?
I see
But
more blood in vascular.
oh yeah, as I say, vascular and vaginal bleeding.
Mm,
Two very popular reasons of why you would see blood. If you're doing a vaginal ultrasound, which we do those in OBGYN settings,
mhm,
and a patient is bleeding, if a patient's miscarrying, if they're on their period, patients have fibroids or ruptured cysts, they will be number one in pain, number two, bleeding.
mhm.
So that is something that is very common, and you have to be able to handle that situation. So if you can't handle that situation, you want to try to figure out how you get around that situation.
Hmm.
But when you
Right.
do clinicals, though, you do have to learn that stuff. I feel like you have to
You
learn
have to be
everything.
exposed to it
Hmm.
before saying, no, I don't
No.
want to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I don't know necessarily if many schools let you choose your clinical sites or setting. So if you are going into this field, just be prepared for that kind of thing because you might have to be in that situation, but just know that that is something that will happen in this career
Mhm.
field.
Yes, exactly. Speaking of
Yeah.
which, I'm kind of going on a tangent here. I saw a skin graft the other day,
Mm.
like a very brand new skin graft, and I had to
Wow.
scan it.
Over it?
I tried. It's hard to see, but
Wow.
I tried. It was really, really cool. Like this patient
Huh.
just had a skin graft done a
Yeah.
week ago, and she came in for a DVT at the
Oh.
skin graft. And
Hmm.
I'm like, are you in pain? She's like, yes. I was like, well, I can't really do a DVT.
I was like, how could you do that?
I
Yeah.
can't,
So then do you have
which
to
is really
wait
interesting. I just, compress as
around?
much as I could. Yeah.
Oh.
But
Wow. I'm for some reason I keep thinking of like a snake in my brain.
it kind of looked
Like
like a
snake
snake
skin.
because it's kind of like, the
Mm.
diagonal
Mm-hmm.
line.
Huh.
Yeah. So they took the skin from her, like the side of her upper thigh, and put it in her
Oh.
calves.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa. I was
Yeah.
so amused. I was like, whoa, that's scary. I only see on Grey's
See?
Anatomy.
Yeah, and now you've seen it. I think I've seen an
Mhm.
episode of Skin Graft on The Good Doctor or something else. But it
And
is out there and we do have to scan that kind of stuff. And you're
yeah.
outpatient.
And
Not like
yeah.
you're in the
And
hospital setting.
exactly. And the liquid that was on it, it was oozing out. And I was just like,
Whoa.
okay. It
You're
was
like,
yellow, like golden yellow. And I'm like,
whoa.
I'm usually okay with this, but I'm like, this is
This
a lot.
you're like this one, no. Yeah. Oh, the amount of things that I see in a hospital
Yeah.
setting. Yeah, we see a lot. Oh, and patients who are like contact, meaning they've got
Mhm.
something going on. They could have MRSA, they could have chicken pox, or they could have TB,
Mhm.
obviously COVID now, monkeypox is what they were like trying to
Anything.
pull out. Basically anything. So think about that when you think about the hospital setting too.
Yes.
But there are precautions to keep you safe. It's
Yeah.
just that's what we get for working in a healthcare
Yes.
career.
I think one of the most intense setting that I worked, it was I was at clinicals, and it
Mhm.
was this patient who's, trying to get a carotid for a lung transplant. And this patient was incubated. He has his own room. He was tested positive for COVID. So he was literally in a bubble with a lot of machines coming out.
Mhm.
And
That's
it
hard.
was just it's a tough scene to just like help
Like walk
my
into.
preceptor out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we gowned up, and I'm just like,
What'd you guys have to scan?
a carotid. It's the
Oh my
pre-op
gosh.
for his lung transplant. Like
Yeah.
he's waiting for his lung. And I'm just like,
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. No, but I mean, that makes it seem to me too that like no matter what situation, like wherever you're at, if you're in an outpatient, if you're inpatient, if
mm-hmm.
you're at a doctor's office, you're at a hospital, there's always going to be hard patients no
Yes.
matter what. And I can remember one specifically when I worked at an outpatient place, this girl just had like gotten her butt done. Like she like got her butt done.
hmm
And I don't know, I forget why they ordered her legs, but they basically ordered her legs and she didn't want to sit down or lay down. She said she couldn't sit down.
So how did she have to go on her belly?
Oh no, I told her that she had to reschedule.
Oh,
I'm like, okay, well, if you can't sit down, you can't lay down, like there's no,
yeah.
I can't scan you standing up,
hmm
accurately and, ergonomically,
hmm
which you can technically scan standing up for like a reflex study, like, because that's the best way to scan a
hmm
reflex study. But, you know, for that specific reason and we want an accurate exam, I was like, let's just reschedule. But I remember like I was like, "Can you sit on the bed?" And she's like, "No." So I'm like, "Okay, well, let's just reschedule." And there are pros and cons to working at different places. I
Yes.
mean, when you are totally done with the clinical and setting, and you just want to work in an office setting, or you want to become a manager, or become a teacher, educator, applications worker, um, those settings are they obviously have pros and cons too, but it's just whenever you're ready to move into that kind of field in this career, you should do it. And there's lots of options for that. And I feel like this job is a really good career for those who are going into it. So obviously, Lynn is starting off. She is a newbie noob, but she is
Very
getting
new.
lots of experiences, and it's really cool. Just go through it. I do have a video that's coming out soon, which is tips for new grad sonographers. So you can kind of see what people have to say, because it's a lot of sonographers who've been in the field already. And hopefully it'll give you guys some insight of how the field is, and give you guys some advice. So check that out. Um,
Yes.
but definitely, do your research, like we always say, and see where it is that you might like to work better. And who knows, maybe you want to work in an outpatient setting now, but you like the hospital setting.
Like me.
Hmm.
My
What would
my opinions definitely change after
after
clinicals.
clinicals? Yep.
And yes, another thing to follow up with Giselle said, like this profession means a sonographer, technologist, the opportunities are endless, like wherever you go. You can start in hospital and you don't like it, move on to outpatient, private practice, open up your own business, write
Mhm.
a book. It's just the more you go, the longer you're in it, the more experience you're gonna get, and it will take you wherever you want to go.
Yeah. So definitely look at everyone's Instagrams too, because you can see
Yeah,
all the
it's
sonographers in there.
growing.
And everyone's got their different thing. I love it because
Different journeys.
we're
Yeah.
all like in the same field, but all doing so many different things and having different experiences. And it's cool too to see all of you guys who were once just students, and now you guys are all working. And now we're welcoming a bunch of new students. So it's really cool. And this community is really great. So you guys don't forget to just hit us up, let us know if you have any questions, and keep on listening to our podcast episodes.
Yes. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. We hope you find it very helpful. If you haven't checked out our last episode about what is diagnostic medical sonography and sonographer technologist versus ultrasound tech, what is the difference? Check that out as well. And stay tuned for future episodes.
Yes, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for connecting through sounds with us. We appreciate you and can't wait to connect with you again next time.